We are back. It is draft month here on Colts Corner with Kevin Bowen. I am Kevin Bowen. Eddie Garrison is with me as well. We will recap the league meetings down in Palm Beach. Thank you to the likes of James Boyd and Stephen Holder and Joel Erickson and J.J. Stankovitz and everybody down there covering it. I've been fortunate to go a couple times. It's always an event where I quickly realize where my tax bracket is compared to others and quickly realize, Kevin, keep your hands to yourself. I'll never forget being on a yacht. I forget if the yacht was called Usher or if it was simply named Usher or if Usher had that yacht previously, but Jim Irsay decided to stay on the yacht instead of staying at the resort because, I'm sure the resort didn't have enough nice hotel rooms, but nonetheless, I almost ran into an automatic glass sliding door on the yacht, and I was just, I couldn't have been more out of place. So probably best that I was here in Indianapolis. We'll recap all of that, get to Twitter questions, and Eddie, we now inch closer to the NFL draft.
Kevin, Final Four is also set. By this time next week, when we record our next podcast, we will know who the national champion is.
We will. I have
my Final Four, all intact, all perfect.
You win all ones? Good for you.
I did.
Good for
I just
you.
felt like those 4 teams were much better than the rest of the field.
Well, certainly there was little debate about them being one seed at the start of the tournament, and usually you have a little bit of debate there. I am sitting on a healthy Auburn-Houston championship matchup ticket, and so now I'm sitting here thinking, should I hedge or should I not?
Ooh.
Would you ride it out?
I don't know how much you wagered on it, and how much is the payout, so that's something we can discuss off air.
By the way, you just popped popcorn. That just smells excellent.
Do you want some?
No. You got a long night, and you got a Pacer game tonight. Man, that just smells so good, though. All right, let's get into it.
Okay.
Congrats on your Final Four. Hopefully,
Thanks.
Houston-Auburn will behave for me over the weekend, but if anyone has advice on how to properly hedge that, again, just the matchup. Don't need a winner on Monday night, just need those two teams playing for the title game. You have my information. Probably the biggest Colts item was just the admittance from Shane Steichen, if you will, the on the record, these guys will split reps. And it sounds like, to get into a little bit of the weeds on it, they will split reps like within a practice even. Eddie, for example, if it's a third down day or a red zone day, they want each of the quarterbacks to get that. I don't know if there's ever, let me start here. I don't know if there's ever an easy way to handle a quarterback competition. I think you are obviously limiting the growth for, parties involved to some degree. So, the old song and tune of Anthony Richardson needs every single rep, and boy, it's reps and reps and reps. That obviously is now evaporated a bit. And now it's about this competition. I'll be curious if and when they commit to one. If I told you they'll commit to one before training camp, what would you say?
I would be shocked.
If I said they'll commit to one after the first preseason game, you would say?
I would still be shocked.
If I said they commit to one after the third preseason game?
I would still be shocked.
I mean, don't they have to at that point? Aren't you like a weekend?
Here's my thought on that, KB. I say I would be shocked because...
Just to alert our audience, at that point, you're about, a week and a half, 2 weeks away from the start of the season, and your practice time is, primarily going to be focused on that week one opponent.
Right. But Shane Steichen is big into the gamesmanship. You think he would come out and announce who the starter is, given the week one opponent? So whomever that may be, a week and a half of preparation of Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson?
Okay, so you're spinning a little bit of a different direction. I guess let's go here. When we are out at Grand Park watching these practices,
right?
Do you think we will continue to see a split all throughout these practices?
I do because we've sat here and we've discussed this since the end of the season. Anthony Richardson hasn't earned it. He just flat out has not earned the right to take every snap with the ones. And if it's a true competition, like they're making it out to seem with the comments from Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard so far after the season, then to me it says that they're going to treat it as such and they're going to operate it as that way with splitting the reps.
Yeah,
and
so
it's not just going to be one practice, it'll be all of them.
I'm interested in that aspect. Is there anything that any guy could do to all of a sudden cement himself, somewhat early in August? If you want to go back to Gardner Minshew and Richardson a couple years ago, Richardson became the starter after the first preseason game. Last year, Eddie, Richardson played, I want to say, 2 series in the first preseason game, none in the second, and then played about a half in that third. I mean, both these guys got to play every preseason game, right? This would have been the year that you wanted the Hall of Fame game, frankly. If you're really going to have this competition, Vinatieri would have gotten in the Hall. I thought there was a chance the Colts could have played in the Hall of Fame game. Remember, only 3 preseason games. How the schedule continues to evolve. I'm curious to see, where we're at from a joint practice standpoint. That will come out here in a little bit once we get to, the schedule coming out in May and all of that. You are correct. Anthony Richardson has certainly not earned the right to have 100% of the reps. Obviously, Daniel Jones hasn't earned the right to have 100% of the reps, hence why he's on his, third team in whatever, the last 5 months. Where I struggle with this is, Eddie, you've been out at training camp practices. You watch Gardner Minshew and Matt Ryan look competent.
Yeah.
And the counter could be, oh, well, that was Gus Bradley defense. But, when you watch these training camp sessions, if you want to be a dink and dunk quarterback and be a pretty consistent thrower of the football, you can largely be that. I mean, hell, Richardson was 65% last year in training camp. There's no way you would have walked away from last year's training camp after watching Richardson and thought, nope, Flacco should start over him. There was nothing that alarming. So I'm curious again what exactly those evaluation points would have to look like for one to emerge more than the other. Maybe there will be something drastic, good or bad, from one of them. And then, this is probably a horrific analogy. I'll just, state it up front, and probably I've already revealed too much about my kids when it comes to using the bathroom. But there is a little bit of an element of this when I hear the splitting of reps to 2 mediocre quarterbacks. I almost feel like it's expecting your 2-year-old to be potty trained in one day. To truly get any improvement, I think you have to commit to consistent reps. And I would argue from a young parent standpoint, if you want to commit to a potty trained individual, that's wishful thinking to think of 12 hours on a Saturday with it raining outside and having your kid naked around the house is all of a sudden going to mean he or she is running to the toilet whenever you want them to over the rest of their lives. To me, you got to commit to your kid naked in the house longer. If you want, these are 2 mediocre quarterbacks, right? To get stark improvement from either, to me, you got to commit to one. And I know it's not the easy answer. I know it's not the earned answer, but I'm just sitting here saying, are you just going to get to training camp and the winner's going to be whoever was less mediocre and that's your quarterback and you're going to go win 7 or 8 games? That's kind of how I envision it. So, I don't know. There's no good answer. Let me be clear on that. Hell, I don't even think my answer is very good, but it's just kind of the overarching thought that I have with this. And if you were going to make me pick, I would pick Richardson to have more of the reps. He's never had a healthy NFL offseason.
Yep.
Never had a healthy NFL offseason. And if he's making tangible, fundamental changes to playing the quarterback position, I would want him to rep that endlessly in 11-on-11 settings. So it's not robotic. So he's not thinking about it come September 10th when the Texans show up week 1 or whoever. Yeah. So, yeah. I got nothing for you.
It's hard, and I think you could see that in some of the, just the facial expressions from Shane Steichen during that 30-minute media availability down in Palm Beach when, he was asked about, hey, when do you want this decided by? He goes, yeah, I don't know, and things like that, and it just looked like there was a little bit of confusion as to how it's all going to go play out from him. When he was, I think it was James Boyd who asked him how the snap breakdown would look from, day to day or whatever. And he was like, yeah, they'll be splitting up everything evenly because one day they're working on first and second downs. One day it's third downs and fourth downs. And you don't want to give one guy the starting reps one day and not the next because they're not working on the same things every day. But I don't know. It's not really an ideal position by any means.
Certainly. Now, I thought there were a couple things that are interesting regarding quarterback that also Steichen said. I want to hit that before we kind of move on, Eddie. I thought it was the most I've heard Shane Steichen allude to completion percentage. I mean, he kind of went there a lot with that. He used the phrases, okay, what are the two things that are going to, or I think he was asked in general, hey, what do you need to see to pick a winner? Who is most consistent? Who's most productive? Well, I would think consistency probably favors Jones, and production probably favors Richardson. Jones is probably going to dig and dunk it. Now, Richardson, of course, how much of a true run threat is he in a red jersey? And one thing I was nodding my head at endlessly was the phrase, I've said to you quite often, Eddie, and to our audience, the Colts can't find easy in their passing game. They're just so bad at finding boring. Methodical, Jack Doyle. How many times did you watch a Colts game in the career of Jack Doyle and you looked at a box score at the end of the game and you said, Doyle had 7 for 68? They need that. They need methodical, boring ass. Yeah. Anthony Richardson has got a great highlight reel.
They need simple.
He needs to have a boring reel. He doesn't have a boring reel. He needs to have more of that. He's got an ugly reel. He needs to have a boring reel, is what he needs to have. 2nd and 8 becomes 2nd and 4. Just simple, again, simple stuff. So when Shane Steichen used the phrase, and this is often one that you hear, hell, I could hear Andrew Luck say that back in 2018. You can't go broke taking a profit. That, I think, rings very true for specifically Richardson, what he needs to work on. The one thing I didn't love hearing, it was
gotta
probably
make the layups, as Chris Ballard put it, right?
Sure, that would be accurate as well. The one thing I didn't love hearing, and I think it was more Ballard than Steichen, but they referenced so much of how Daniel Jones looked against them in that 2022 game, and I'm like, at that point, the Colts were deader than dead. That was the Nick Foles' convulsing on the field game.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like decision makers, because I know the Pacers have done this before. The Pacers have signed guys that play well against them. And it's all right, there's also 78 games in an NBA season besides the 4 they play against your team. Tonight's a perfect example. Who are the Pacers playing tonight, Eddie?
Charlotte Hornets.
The Charlotte Hornets are going for a season sweep against the Pacers.
Mm-hmm.
If you went and asked an NBA fan on the street, are the Hornets good or not, they would tell you no. If you asked a Pacer fan, they would say, oh my, they're incredible.
You know who they are, Kevin? They are the Jacksonville Jaguars.
They are the Jags. I know. That was the analogy I used earlier. They are the Jags, man. And so when I hear them bring up the Daniel Jones game against the Colts, I'm like, all right, 1 game versus 69 games? Yeah. So I get the quarterback market was a bit bleak in who you're going to sign, but that one stood out to me. Anything other quarterback-wise, Eddie, before we move on? Sam Ehlinger to the Broncos.
Mm-hmm.
I think you and I talked about it in last week's pod. I would probably draft a quarterback. Whatever. Your 5th rounder versus Jason Bean for the 3rd QB. And again, your 3rd QB will dress, and if and when Anthony Richardson gets hurt, your 3rd QB is your backup.
Now, let me ask you this. Does the departure of Sam Ehlinger make you think that they will draft a quarterback now? Because I know he was very, very liked and respected in the locker room and within, Shane Steichen in the front office.
I think I thought they should have drafted one even before this. Now, let me be very clear.
Are you using a 3rd-round pick on Quinn Ewers? Because that's where he's going to go.
Oh, yeah. Boy, that's just a hair too early for me, Eddie. I probably started in round 5. Now, I don't think this dude or Jason Bean should get any reps. Richardson and Jones should get every single rep.
Right.
It's just the unfortunate nature to where you're at right now with your depth chart here. But as we record right now on April 2nd, you have 8 guys gone from last year's team. Sam Ehlinger, Kylan Granson, Will Fries, Ryan Kelly on offense. And on defense, 2 in the front 4, if you will. Raekwon Davis, Dayo Dengbo, and then EJ Speed.
Grant Stewart, that's 9. Wait, 3. That's 8.
That's 8. Sorry.
You just left him off the list.
I left him off. How dare I leave Grant Stewart off the list?
It'll be 9 when Julian Blackmon signs elsewhere.
It'll be 9 when Blackmon signs, 10 when Flacco signs.
If.
Somebody will pick him up. And then
sure?
assume 11 with Allie Cox. And then after that, what do you got? Trey Sermon, Mark Lewinsky, Taven Bryan. That's a big number of guys in your own house that left and signed elsewhere.
Yeah, but it's not like any of them were outside of Blackmon, like in maybe Speed, just like major contributors.
Well, Fries and Kelly.
Perhaps, but you knew that Kelly was the writing on the wall when
Right.
he approached them leading up to training camp about an extension, and they're like, "Yeah, I don't want to do one at this time." And then
I guess I bring that up to say this: I bet if we looked at the past 7 or 8 Chris Ballard off seasons, we wouldn't find that number that big. Now, part of it is because he's retained so many of them. In a normal off season, he resigns Kelly, Fries, and Dio.
Yeah.
But he obviously didn't do that this year. That was really the only thing quarterback wise. Anything more you got there?
Nope.
I like Braden Smith staying at right tackle. I've long been a believer. I said this about, I guess it's really always been Braden. I'm trying to think of, I don't know, did some people think Bernard Ryman was going to play guard with the short arms at the NFL level? If you have a position that you like or a position you feel good about, is probably the better way to put it. Don't F with it, especially when it's a tackle. So I'm fine with that. We'll see about right guard in the draft. Right now I am a tight end is the definite need. You could talk me into linebacker, O-line, and D-line very quickly after that. That's probably how I view it. Now, is center really a competition, or was that just like, let's appease our Ball State audience and the Danny Pinter family?
Maybe it is. I mean, they liked him enough to play him. They started him at center when Bortolini was healthy one game, right?
Yeah, they did, and that was that Denver game. So, that was interesting. When Kelly was still out, they did start Pinter, and it didn't go great. Obviously, that Denver game was one of their poorest offensive games of the year. So, I don't know. Maybe that's more of a competition. So right now, you don't know your quarterback, you don't know your center, and you don't know your right guard. That's probably and tight end playing time.
Kicker? Question mark?
Yeah, I was just focusing on offense here for a second.
Isn't that technically offense, though? A little bit kicker? I know it's special teams, but
I don't know.
Points.
Some would argue it's been offensive, period, here lately from north of 50. And then I do think, again, I do think they're going to draft an offensive lineman in the middle rounds. So,
especially when you hear Ballard say that the depth is good in the middle rounds.
Yeah. That was probably the main Colts-related stuff. A couple questions I would have just in general next time we chat with them, with these guys. Ballard did sing a little bit of a different tune of like, hey, we now like that they have the same skill set, Jones and Richardson. And it's like, well, back in the Combine, it didn't sound like that was a prerequisite. Mm-hmm. Was it, or is that just something that you just kind of, fell into, if you will? And then, again, he's not really going to say it, but like, when would they want to know? Is there anything that could happen in the spring to where you do commit to a guy at the start of training camp?
Injury? That'd be the only one, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Last year in the spring, they actually had a little bit of a shortened off-season program. I think they only did 3 weeks of it. You can't have. I think you got to use all 10 of your OTAs and your veteran mini camp. I would say, Shane said he was looking into tweaking the training camp schedule. I would look at that certainly as well. I did like, part of the owners' meetings, I always enjoyed talking to other coaches about Colts players that came from other teams, and I saw James did that with Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings about Cam Bynum. It seems like we're in a day and age, Eddie, with defensive players that if you have a corner background and you're slow, you're going to eventually play safety. And if you have a safety background and you're semi-big, you're going to play linebacker. It seems like that's and the Colts are the poster child. Julian Blackmon was that, and EJ Speed. Sorry, not EJ Speed.
Jalen Carlisle.
Thank you, Jalen Carlisle, and now Cameron Bynum. So I like that. I think when the game's trending to more of a passing league, having more corner instincts at safety makes sense to me. So I think that kind of checks out.
Seems counterintuitive, don't you think? If you're too slow to play corner, what makes you think you're fast enough to play safety where you have to cover more ground,
Yeah. I guess you could be a little bit more confined to the box. You know what I'm saying. I don't mean like
I know, I'm not saying
crazy
you, but I'm
slow,
saying like
but certainly that kind of plays into it. The only other thing I was just going to add, and this is probably more of a bigger picture thing, but certainly wish the best for Jim Irsay and his health. I know how much it has to pain him to not be at these meetings for a second straight year. And unfortunately, those down there and the fan base, probably most importantly, didn't get a chance to talk with him. So, now here we are, 3 months removed from the end of the season. Mm-hmm. We've yet to hear from him. If you look at a normal offseason calendar, the next couple of times we would typically hear from him is either the draft, Saturday of the draft, or training camp. Typically at training camp, he makes the rounds before he goes into the booth with Greg Rakestraw and Rick Venturi during a game. So, Jim, obviously physically, he has some struggles right now, and I'm sure it is very difficult for him to just purely travel. But I thought he actually sounded good in the post-game locker room in Week 18. Like, I didn't think it was, random talking or, however you want to describe.
Slurring.
Yeah, slurring, anything along those lines. I felt like he handled that pretty well. I don't recall anything too alarming either when he spoke about Dallas Clark at the Ring of Honor, a couple months earlier. Now, he did that from a golf cart on the field. But I do think it's a disservice to your franchise and your fan base that we have not heard from him outside of the pen letter in 3 months. You were in your worst playoff drought in 30 years. You have made a decision that, I would argue 80, 90% of the NFL would not have made in retaining Chris Ballard for a 9th year. And we typically hear from you. He's been such an accommodating owner through all these years, and he's the one. I mean, I felt the need, weirdly, to ask Chris Ballard why he thought he was getting a 9th year, because we don't have access to Jim Irsay right now. That's just odd, and it's very un-Colts-like. It's very un-Irsay-like with this. And again, this time last year, he was out of sight, out of mind. We didn't even get him in post-game locker rooms, remember?
Right.
I mean, he was not there, right, at the Colts-Texans game Week 18?
I don't think so.
I believe that was accurate. So the fact that he was there and spoke with the team and the Colts uploaded a video of it and all of that, he obviously, was in a good enough health state then. I would love to hear from him. I think you owe it to your fan base, and I think it's important for, leaders of, and I'd say this for any organization. I'd say this for my wife's company. When you are in a time of struggle and you have very public decisions that you have made that are, I would argue, head-scratching, I think it's vital, not just to your employees, probably more to your fan base, to address that head on and not just show up when you're winning. You and I did it last year, Eddie. We went over how many times have we heard from Irsay after a win versus a loss on Twitter. It was stark, the contrast from that. To me, you lead with success. You lead when you are succeeding, and you lead when you're failing as well, because that's when I think people truly need to hear it. So obviously, you wish the best for Jim Irsay's physical health and mental health. Physical health seems to be the one major issue for him right now, but I don't know. Could he show up on Zoom? Seemingly we did that all throughout COVID. He's done that before.
Did you talk to Stephen Holder of ESPN about Jim Irsay at all during your weekly visit with him?
Yeah, we had him on today. Yeah.
So on our show, Curry and Company, on Tuesday, we were talking about it, and he seemed pretty optimistic that Jim Irsay will speak after the draft at some point.
Yeah, he typically talks Saturday of draft week, usually during the draft.
Yeah.
We've gone to his office. He's come to the media room before and spoken. So, yeah, hopefully that's that. But, Eddie, that is,
that's another thing here real quick is that he made it also sound like that Jim is much more mobile than he was before. We had the videos of him. I think you're the one who tweeted out with him on, I don't know what the device was that he had, but he was like upright and he was being pushed on it, but it does sound like he's starting to move around again. But Holder also added that even though he's not there, he is still on Zoom for a lot of these owners meetings, and he's still leading the I think it's the finance committee or whatever committee that he's like the top guy on, and he was still leading that meeting. So even though he was not present or is not present in Palm Beach, he was still active and a part of all the meetings that were going on,
which is great to hear and obviously see for those owners and all of that. And I know how much, again, that means to Jim. I think it'd also be healthy for your fan base to hear that.
I agree with you. Yeah.
And I guess kind of last thing just to add to it. I think when you start to get into draft season, Eddie, you know how that is. There's no greater hype show for the entire NFL than the draft.
No.
That is the weekend of hope springs eternal, literally and figuratively, calendar wise and with the draft. I mean, it's unbelievable how fan bases react to the draft. So the closer you get to the next season, it's kind of like, well, yeah, I mean, I'm still going to ask these questions because we haven't gotten you in a group setting since, last training camp. But again, the relevancy of it or the importance of it, I think wanes a little bit. So, again, hopefully Jim Irsay's health is in good shape. And I know how much it means to him, not only to, play golf, play with his grandson, grandkids, I should say, and all of that. So, best to Jim Irsay, and hopefully we'll hear from him soon.
Are you ready to transition into Twitter questions?
Let's do it.
Handful of them to get to, starting with Daner. This might be too close to when Chris Ballard speaks today, but when Shane Steichen said, quote, most consistent quarterback will win the starting job, end quote, could you ask Ballard to expand on what metrics will be used, if any, to determine that?
Yeah, I'm going to throw this in the question list. This is a good one. Is it purely completion percentage? I heard that a lot from Steichen at the owners' meetings. I mean, he brought up Daniel Jones' complete. I never remember him being that focused on completion percentage. Sometimes Frank Reich and Shane both are big believers in like yards per attempt, and I get that's a little bit more difficult to evaluate in an off-season setting necessarily. It's not like you have these box scores where you can relatively easily chart whatever 10 of 14. But like I said earlier, man, these practices are mostly dink and dunk.
Yeah.
Now the Lou Anarumo wrinkle is different, but go back to how people viewed practice in 2022. Did you think people thought Matt Ryan was all? I mean, I remember walking out of Grand Park thinking, boy, Matt Ryan was really efficient. But I swear I can't recall one deep ball he threw. And then sure enough, the regular season rolls around and teams suffocate the Colts defensively, yeah. And, Matt Ryan didn't survive that. So, yeah, that is a question that I would have, certainly, on exactly what are the things you need to see. And the other weird thing, and, Daniel Jones can obviously make plays with his legs too, but just without having that red jersey, it's just hard. There are so many plays in training camp where DeForest Buckner will tap a dude and he'll raise his hand saying he got a sack, and the offense continues to play out the play, and it's like, wait, was that a sack or was that not? Or did Richardson Houdini it and throw it 30 yards down the field and it was completed? That's what makes it challenging too.
A handful of J's, or a couple, I should say. Jamie and Jimmy next. Jamie, draft scenario. Tyler Warren and Campbell are gone. Chargers offer 22 plus another pick for 14. Is 22 too high for Mason Taylor?
Gosh, can you imagine a draft where the third tight end goes at 22? It'd be kind of wild when you think about past precedent. I mean, hell, would you trade back again? I know that sounds wild. Did you see the Bill Barnwell trade scenarios?
Yes.
So he had the one of Pittsburgh trading for Richardson and giving the Colts 21. Did you see the Colts one he had?
No.
He had the Colts trading back from 14 to, I believe it was 39. Trade back from 14 to 39 with Chicago. They would have gotten Chicago's, I think it's 39, 42, and then some pick in the 70s. Basically, the Colts would have had 5 picks, 2 of their own, 3 of the Bears, from pick 39 to 75. I'm thinking, I bet Ballard is foaming at the mouth thinking about that idea. How glorious that is. Okay, Warren and Campbell are gone. 22 too high for Mason Taylor. It probably is.
Is that Jihad or?
Yeah, Jihad Campbell. Yeah, the freak athlete. Would you look at D-line there? Would you look at O-line there? Those would be a couple of other options. I am.
Is Colston Loveland still there?
Yeah, that is a good point. Yeah, that is a good point. Again, I am of the belief that tight end has got to be there in round 1 or 2. And then in general, and we'll get to our positional mock draft. We'll probably do that, I don't know, maybe next pod or the pod after that. In general, linebacker, D-line, and O-line probably show up next. I'd like to push running back into that group, but I can't.
I can't either.
I do think running back needs to happen, but day two running back, you would have to be able to believe that Taylor's going to hit the wall here soon.
Right.
And I just don't see that. Granted, there are a lot of numbers out there that would indicate Taylor very well could hit a wall.
Yeah.
Just because that's how guys with his carries dating back to his days in college typically operate.
2 questions left. Jimmy is up next. I wanted to do some more lighthearted questions in the off-season spirit. I'm very happy to not bring up who will be not named, but Andrew Luck made news with Stanford for some personnel changes, and it got me thinking. And I would like you to answer this very unserious question very seriously. If Andrew Luck,
I love how he's prefacing this. This is excellent. This is what the offseason's all about.
if Andrew Luck called Jimmy and said he wanted to come back to football, would Irsay bring him back to the Colts? If the answer is yes, at what age do you think Irsay would finally say no?
How great is this? We should have led with this, honestly.
We probably should have.
How old's Luck? Luck's my age, right? 6 days older than me, so he's 35.
How'd that make you feel, Kev?
Yeah, it makes me feel old, man.
At what point did you start feeling old when athletes were, for me, for example, it was like Luka. Luka was 21 years old, and I was like 22 or 23, and he's younger than me, making
there was a little bit of that,
like
when the Colts roster started to turn over, we're like, damn, I'm only younger than like Vinatieri, Matt Ryan, and Phillip Rivers. Like, those years, it did. But I will say, like this Notre Dame recruiting class, Notre Dame has like Jerome Bettis' kid, Ryan Clark's kid, Plaxico Burress' kid, Brian Urlacher's kid. I'm like, wait, what? I mean, I watched all these dudes in the prime of their careers. So that's probably when I started feeling old. Okay, unserious question. I need to answer it seriously. After one workout, they would tell Andrew Luck, come play quarterback for him. Now, given I don't know what the hell Andrew Luck looks like, I'm going off the basis of Andrew Luck is in NFL shape, which, I mean, I watched all 30 minutes of the press conference yesterday with Stanford. I want to get to that here in just a second. He does not look like an NFL quarterback to me. I don't know. If Richardson was a rookie, maybe you'd have a different answer. But, I mean, shit, the Colts quarterback situation's a mess. If Andrew Luck all of a sudden worked out well and you said, hey, give us 3 years, brother, keep the ship afloat, why not? God, what a great question. I'll let you finish your popcorn before you chime in on it, but I would say after one work, I mean, what? You got no ties to Richardson financially after this season, really? You got no ties to Daniel Jones after this season? Right? Am I crazy? Is that an unserious answer to an unserious question?
I can't even seriously answer this question. The final one here. Hypothetically, Ballard goes out and makes an aggressive free agent wide receiver signing or trade, if you think that's more likely. Right now, what is the player he would bring in?
Wait, give that to me again.
Hypothetically, Chris Ballard goes out and makes an aggressive free agent wide receiver signing or trade, if you think that is more likely. Right now, what is or who is the player he would bring in?
I'd have to look at the free agent wideouts. I don't think there's much left. I mean, if you're talking significant, I still think a missing ingredient. I think there's two missing ingredients in the Colts wide receiver room. One, a player that can separate better from 0 to 10 yards. Don't think that's really Pierce's forte. Pierce is a great separator, of course, down the field. Don't think that's a great forte. Downs got a little bit of that. Preferably, you would have some height, though, kind of on top of that if I'm going to be nitpicky. And then two, I still think they're not a great yak group. And that can come in all shapes and sizes. Prime Deebo Samuel is certainly the poster child of it. That would be
Tyreek.
Yeah, I mean Tyreek's. Yeah,
prime Tyreek. I think he's starting to exit the prime a little bit.
Right. I mean, I don't know. Does Justin Jefferson wake up one day and say J.J. McCarthy's terrible, or I don't know? Do the Bengals realize whatever we need to pay Trey Hendrickson, Jamar Chase all of a sudden's open? I watched that whole Luck presser. Man, I forgot how much he loves Frank Reich. And Frank Reich, if you would have told me the other day, Eddie, Kevin, pick a college that Frank Reich is. A college football program that Frank Reich is.
Stanford.
It would have taken me a while, but then I would have got to Stanford. Now, religiously, obviously, that doesn't necessarily align. Maybe Notre Dame would be the better, but Stanford fits. But man, Luck, we actually played the clip on our show this morning. I don't want to get into a rabbit hole, and blame Jimmy for the question because he's brought my mind to this, and I certainly don't want to spend more than a minute or two on it. But I had two takeaways from Andrew Luck's press conference yesterday.
Okay.
One, I've never heard Andrew Luck that outwardly talk about winning. I mean, he stated that every other answer. I don't care. This is an interim situation. We need to win. Win. I mean, he said that word win so many times. I've never heard him say that. I don't bring that up necessarily to act like he's not a winner or, he didn't want to win. Obviously, he's a great competitor, but that stood out to me. And then two, it is still stunning that he retired 9 months after playing, in his words, the most enjoyable football season of his life. I mean, 2018, the most enjoyable football season of his life. Are you watching baseball over there? Mm-hmm. Eating popcorn, watching baseball.
Talking football. That's right.
That sounds like the
man of many talents.
Amen to that, brother. I mean, 2018, he not only had, you could make the argument that was his best individual season, playing-wise, but he also, really enjoyed Frank Reich and really enjoyed football, period. And then 9 months later, it's done. It just stunning. And it's done not because of a significant injury. Ostrignomen, what was it? In the calf area, what was that thing called?
Oh, I wish I could tell you.
Aren't 10% of people born with it or something? Again, that's all I got. I can't expend any more energy on that. April Fools came and went. I think it's the stupidest holiday in the world. Enough.
Is it a holiday?
No, you're right. Shouldn't be a holiday.
I would love to get Luck, literally on record with his voice. Truth Serum and all. I know Zach Kiefer did the Andrew Luck series. Very well job. He did it very well. But I would love to hear it from him. Everything that happened, starting from the snowboard incident.
I don't think we're ever going to get that.
I know, but I would just...
No. I'm with you.
Never? You don't think we'll ever get it?
I don't know. Yeah, he just doesn't strike me as that type of dude that just wants to do a tell-all.
Would he in the later stages of life, do you think?
If his daughter made him.
Okay.
Daughters made him.
Final Twitter question is from Craig. Counter argument to having a veteran backup Anthony Richardson or drafting a high-round quarterback draft pick, like you mentioned it in your recent podcast. First, by not having a named veteran quarterback or second-round QB behind AR, you clearly state to the team and fans that this is AR's job for 2025. That's important because you are setting the expectation that we will ride with AR through all likely missteps and learnings of a young quarterback. Second, if AR gets injured, throw in Sam Ehlinger, who knows the system. Even if he fails and loses it, it helps with a higher round draft pick. Likely, if AR is injured for a significant amount of time in 2025, it likely means he is injury prone and not your franchise quarterback. Third, you free up resources either with more money to throw at a free agent quarterback, wide receiver, defensive end, etc., or more draft capital because you are not wasting a higher round pick on QB.
Yeah, obviously Craig sent this in before Sam Ehlinger to the Broncos. I understand where Craig has come from. Craig lives on a boat that is, if you're not winning, get all the bleep off the boat. Tank, Arch, blah, blah, blah. But,
Awful for Arch?
Yes, right. Asinine for Arch, I think it is. But that's not how they obviously want to operate. And
Did you add a couple extra words there, or is it really asinine for Arch?
No, or ask for Arch.
Or letters, I should say.
I guess that would work as well. Yeah, actually, that sounds much more college-like. How much do they view this Richardson experience of okay, healthy offseason plus kicking the competition ass? Is that the final life preserver that they're throwing out there? And that is worth, if you, and we will never know the answer to this, but let's say Anthony Richardson resurrects it. Turns out to be a very good player for 10 years in the NFL. we won't know if it's a healthy offseason necessarily. We won't know, he might say, man, Daniel Jones just lit a fire into me. Like A.D. Mitchell did to Alec Pierce. Daniel Jones lit that. That obviously is worth it. I mean, it will arguably save your franchise. And, yes, obviously the higher up in the draft you are there. But, again, let's not act like all these quarterbacks are taking 1 overall. They're not. They're not. I mean, our Final Four in the AFC last year was what? Allen is 7th overall. Mahomes is 10th overall. Lamar is 32nd overall. And Stroud was 2 overall. So we got 1 in the top 5. So, you just got to find the right one, which obviously the highest you are, more availability you have in assessing that.
That wraps up Twitter questions.
I can't believe we're 3 weeks from tomorrow away from the draft.
I know. Does this mean we're getting closer and closer and closer to the Kevin Bowen mock draft 1.0?
We usually throw a positional mock draft in. We usually do an actual mock. So, I feel like we are getting close.
Are you brokenhearted about Olivia Miles going into the transfer portal?
Well, I think it's WNBA economics more than anything.
Well, she's not going to the W.
Right, exactly, because of the WNBA's economics. I mean, Caitlin Clark made like $70,000 last year with a fever.
Correct. And she stayed an extra year in college.
I mean, and obviously Olivia Miles wouldn't be garnering the endorsements that Caitlin Clark would be walking into the WNBA. I mean, it's just how much is Cooper Flagg going to make as a number 1 pick? $12 million annually?
Ooh, good question. I'm not sure.
And Paige Beckers will be the number 1 pick, right, in the WNBA, and she's going to make $75,000. I mean, it's just amazing. So, go back to college if you're Olivia Miles. Also, I don't know how much people realize this. Olivia Miles has gone through some pretty significant injuries at Notre Dame. Now, some would say you run to the WNBA then, get your guaranteed money, but also I don't think she wants to play a WNBA season right away. Like, the WNBA season starts like in 6 weeks. There's no time off. Caitlin Clark talked about this last year. So I think she would say, hey, my body needs some rest. She was hurt at the end of the year. Let me go back to school, make I would assume healthy 6 figures. And Notre Dame's got to pay Hannah Hidalgo too. So, I'm a little bummed, but I get it on many levels.
Not to mention they're going to redo the collective bargaining agreement after this next season.
Right. This will not be an issue potentially as early as next year.
Right.
Because she will make a lot more for being the number 2 pick than she would this year.
Yeah, so that's probably the main reason in it, right?
Yeah. I guess what I was saying right there is these future Olivia Miles situations, I don't think we'll have as many of them in the women's game because it will be more lucrative, like you said, for the rookie contract.
All right, last thing. 2 things, though. 1, early Masters pick. I don't know if you've got that locked in yet. 2, what's coming up on the website?
Well, until I see the official entry list and Tiger's not in it, I'll go Tiger. I think the Achilles could heal. I saw the tweet earlier this week. I forget what date he sent it out on. If not Tiger, Jordan Spieth. On the website right now, some people have asked me the question a lot, why or should Shane Steichen continue to call plays? When I asked him at the Combine, he kind of looked at me like, you serious? But I felt the need to ask him. And not necessarily because I think Shane Steichen's a bad offensive play caller. I really don't. But there are some coaches, Nick Sirianni being one of them, as you get into your first-time head coaching tenure, you take stuff off your plate. You feel like you're stretched too thin, right? And clearly the Colts had some leadership issues last year. Whether you want to blame that on Steichen or the locker room, somebody deserves the blame for that. And Steichen has said, like, he needs to be better in some of those areas. So it's a question I asked him. That article's up on the website. If you want to check that out, 1075thefan.com. He's Eddie Garrison. I'm Kevin Bowen. Everybody have a great week. Thanks for listening.